Hello everyone, today I'm going to be walking you through how to insulate an internal wall using multifoil insulation. But before we delve into anything, let's take a look at the materials you need and the assessments you need to complete before installation. As with all internal wall insulation systems, you're going to need a range of tools to ensure the work is completed as easily as possible. And right here, we've laid out all the tools that you'll need for a multifoil insulation install. As with every installation, you're going to need a tape measure to ensure that you can measure the area as well as the insulation that you're cutting. You're then going to need a range of hand tools, including a spirit level and a hammer. These will help you along the way in your installation process. Next up here, we have our cutting tools, which includes heavy-duty shears, a heavy-duty craft knife, and an electric rotary cutter for the smoothest cuts. The next part is very important, and that is to make sure you have your SuperFOIL tape. This stuff is really good at sealing overlaps, and it's essential for a good quality install as well as an airtight installation. Next up here we have our stapling tools, including the SuperFOIL hand stapler, a hammer stapler and the tackwise. What we would recommend for the best quality install is a tackwise, as it will give the best results. And for this system specifically, which we'll go into a little bit later, you're going to need 14mm staples. For multifoil installations, it's really important that you get the correct size battens to ensure an air gap, which will enhance performance. So you're going to need the correct size batten and a timber batten cutting tool like a handsaw or a circular saw. Now we're going to run through the specific components for this system. So first off, you're going to need our high-performing SuperFOIL SF19 Plus, of course. Then you're going to need your SuperFOIL multifoil tape, which is essential for sealing the overlaps to make sure you get an airtight installation. This stuff is very durable, so it's very important. Next up, you're going to make sure you get the correct size batten. For this case, it's going to be 38mm battens. It's also highly important that you get the correct size staples, in this case 14mm staples for this system. And lastly, you're going to need the correct finishing material. In this case, we're going for plasterboard. Depending on your working environment, PPE may be needed as required. So the PPE that you may need is a hard hat, a dust mask, safety goggles, hearing protection, a high-vis vest, gloves, and safety boots. We also have a little safety caution for you guys before you start installing. SuperFOIL can easily be rolled out. However, the product is a flexible product, so it won't be able to support your weight if you roll it out over a loft hatch, for example. So right now I'm going to show you what could happen if you step on it over an open hole. To avoid any incidents or injury, it's very important that you put out warning signs where any open holes might be. It's very important that you watch this video in full before you start installing SuperFOIL. But now that we've covered all the materials and tools that you'll need for installation, we can go into how you install SuperFOIL insulation. First, an initial layer of battens should be applied at no more than 600mm centers. These must be secured to the wall using mechanical fixings that are suitable to support the weight of the structure. It is essential these are level and sound in terms of being fixed to the wall. Where there are any irregularities, you may need to use shims or similar methods to ensure the overall surface is flat and even. Now it's time for cutting, but first you're going to want to measure the size of the area that you're insulating and use those measurements to measure out your SuperFOIL. Before cutting, you just want to mark the cutting line on the insulation as a guide. Now you can grab your electric rotary cutter and start cutting the SuperFOIL to the correct size. After cutting, it is highly important to seal the cut edges. Use the SuperFOIL multifoil tape to ensure the edges are properly sealed, which will help to maintain the product's integrity and airtightness. Now that you've cut your SuperFOIL to size, you can now fit the SuperFOIL in one continuous stretch over the course of the walls to be covered. We recommend installing the top layer first from side to side on a horizontal layer. Simply staple the SuperFOIL using appropriate staples at no more than 300mm spacings, removing slack as you go. When installing the next layer of the SuperFOIL, be sure to overlap the previous layer by at least 50mm. Now that the SuperFOIL has been stapled to the battens, it is vitally important that the entire installation is properly sealed with SuperFOIL multifoil tape. Any joints between layers of SuperFOIL must be overlapped and sealed using the tape. Simply adhere the tape using firm pressure along the joints, trying to avoid air pockets between the tape and the SuperFOIL. Once the SuperFOIL product has been affixed securely to the first batten frame and completely taped, the secondary batten layer can be applied. The secondary counter battens should be fixed at no more than 600mm centers or to suit the internal finish. The batten should be secured using suitable mechanical fixings through the SuperFOIL into the first layer of battens installed earlier. This second batten layer mechanically fixes the product and provides the needed space to ensure the consistency of the required 20mm air gap. But why is the air gap even important? Within your build-up, it's very important that you account for the correct air spaces. Air spaces on both sides help reduce conduction, and the airtight design prevents heat loss through convection. Now that you've successfully installed the SuperFOIL, we're now going to run through some special considerations that you could run into on the site. Starting off with the floor junction. The joint between the wall and floor is an area of particularly high risk for thermal bridging issues, making proper installation technique essential. When working with a solid floor, the construction of the stud framework should feature a continuous batten fitted on the slab or floor surface. This batten provides the base fixing point for the SuperFOIL. If the roll is required to be trimmed to fit a specific width, it is important that the cut edge is taped to provide a sealed edge. Now that the SuperFOIL has been installed using the correct size battens, plasterboard or another finishing material may now be fitted to the outer batten according to the directions of the manufacturer. Boards may need to be cut to size, and holes may also need to be made to bring pipes or cables through. It is important at this stage to make notes on where battens are located as a guide of where best to hang things like pictures and shelving. Moving on to the ceiling junction now. The key point when joining SuperFOIL to the ceiling plate is that the SuperFOIL overlaps in such a way that creates a continuous thermal envelope. The SuperFOIL should be installed between two battens sited at the very top of the room at the ceiling plate. There must be no gaps between the battens and the ceiling. Moving on to window and door reveals now. The treatment for this will require consideration of the depth of the reveal and the thickness of the frame that is exposed in the reveal. First, roll the insulation over the window and mark the edges of these reveals on the surface of the insulation. You should then extend the sides of these window markings inwards by an equal amount to the depth of the reveal, which will create your cut line. Next, using appropriate cutting tools, carefully cut your insulation along this cut line. Afterwards, carefully seal the cut edges using SuperFOIL multifoil tape before folding the new insulation flaps into the reveal, along the joists and up to the window frame. You should then cut 2 additional strips of insulation to fit the top and bottom of the reveal. Measure the internal width and depth of the window reveal. This will provide the dimensions of these additional strips. Once cut to an appropriate size, these should be sealed on all edges using SuperFOIL multifoil tape. Finally, you should install timber battens or shims to fix the SuperFOIL in place at the edge of the window frame. The combined thickness of these battens and shims and the plasterboard should not exceed the depth of the window reveal. These battens should be installed around the perimeter of the window reveal as well as around the perimeter of the frame. We're now going to talk about what you need to do when making provisions for electrical points and service protrusions. We use the term service protrusions to indicate any feature which has to come through the SuperFOIL material to the interior of the room. These could be radiator pipes, electrical points, cables, television, telephone, and data cables. Where these need to come through the first layer, cut a small hole until these have been fully fed through, and then carefully seal using the SuperFOIL multifoil tape. It is important that you carefully seal this protrusion fully so it remains properly airtight. Let's now talk about copper and plastic radiator pipes. When pulling copper pipes through, ensure there is enough flexibility to move them forward by approximately 100 mm. Wrap the copper pipe in a non-metallic insulation material to prevent direct contact with the aluminium in the SuperFOIL, as this can cause a reaction. While the reaction is not harmful, avoiding it helps maintain the system's longevity. If copper pipes need to be extended, the work should be carried out by a suitably qualified person following building regulations. Just like copper, plastic pipes may also need to be pulled through or extended. Additionally, adjustments to the heating system, such as relocating radiators or other components, may be required to accommodate the internal wall insulation. Any resiting of radiators should be undertaken by a qualified professional.